ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः.
If we consider rationally and wholeheartedly, it should be easy to understand that there is a supreme controller who is the source of everything. Who is the source of everything. It's an easy thing to understand, as I've many times given the example. If even a simple object such as this requires much intelligence and endeavor to design and produce it, then what to speak of the whole cosmic manifestation? If I was to suggest that this came into being by chance, no one would believe it. Even though it is practically infinitely more simple than that of the cosmic than the cosmic manifestation, it is sufficiently complex that it cannot come into being simply by chance. Therefore, it is a completely reasonable proposition to suggest that there is a supreme controller and designer behind the cosmic manifestation. However, people with a limited conception of reality cannot accommodate the concept of such a greatly powerful and intelligent person behind everything. They will say that yes, we can understand, we can conceive of a designer of this, but we cannot conceive of a designer who can design such an immense cosmos. They are immense and complex. They are frog in the well philosophers. That which is beyond their immediate circumspection, they cannot conceive of. Presumably you all know the example of the frog in the well. The frog couldn't imagine anything beyond his well, and when informed that there is a body of water called the ocean, which is literally billions of times bigger than his well, then it was beyond his power to imagine. And although he couldn't conceive of the existence of the ocean, his inability to conceive of it did not negate the existence of the ocean. So in the same way, because mundane scientists cannot conceive of the existence of a supreme designer, doesn't negate his existence. There is actually no good explanation of the cosmic manifestation than this. Why don't you take the mic? Better. So admittedly, it is difficult for tiny living beings to conceive of the greatness of the Supreme God. Shastra gives us information. Just like in this verse it is stated that all the ingredients of the cosmic manifestations are part and parcel of Vasudeva. Now the meaning of Vasudeva is one who resides everywhere. He is everywhere and everything. He is personally present everywhere. And the whole cosmic manifestation is, in one sense, non-different from him. This is impersonal representation. Prabhupada gave examples to explain how the material energy is non-different from the Supreme Lord. One example he gave was that of a factory and a factory owner. If we go to, for instance, the Ford Motor Car Company, the factory, they have several factories throughout the world. So if you go to the Ford factory, quite likely you won't find Mr. Ford or any member of the Ford family personally present here at that time. Or even if you find him present, he'll be in one part of the complex and not everywhere in the complex. But although he may not be personally, physically present, he is certainly present. Because the whole factory is set up by his desire, at his prompting, and is under his control, completely involved in it. Even if he only goes there 2 days in a year, he's completely involved. So in this way, the factory is the expanded energy of Mr. Ford. It is his impersonal energy. It can be stated like that. Because it's not him personally there, but nevertheless it is an expansion of his desires and properties. And so in the same way Prabhupada explained, he gave this example. The material energy is the impersonal, can be considered the impersonal energy of the world. Another example Prabhupada gave to explain the term separated energy. He gave the example of himself speaking into the microphone and that being recorded. So that sound may be played back in another place where Prabhupada is not personally present. So that playback will be the sound of Prabhupada's voice. So it is not different from Prabhupada, but at the same time it's separated from him. So Prabhupada explained this is an example of separated energy. It's not different from and produced by and dependent upon the speaker, but at the same time separated from him. So all these examples help to make it easier for us to understand the relationship of the Supreme Lord with His creation. But ultimately this can all be understood by the mercy of the Lord Himself. Shastra gives us some idea. But Shastra deals with the topics of the unlimited Supreme Lord. What to speak of the Supreme Lord, even His material energy is beyond our power to fully understand. Even now, after so many years of scientific research, there are still very basic functions of the human body which scientists don't understand at all. One neurosurgeon told me that actually we don't really understand how the brain works. We have theory, but we're not sure. It's generally accepted that impulses are transferred from one neuron to another, but it's never been demonstrated. So, if we can't even understand this material creation very deeply, then what to speak of He who is behind it all? Shastra gives us some indication. And those who are faithful followers of Shastra, they can understand the Supreme Lord. Shastra or Litvat, that is stated at the beginning of Vedanta Sutra. In the first sutra or aphorism of Vedanta Sutra is Athato Brahma Jignasa. Now we should inquire into the absolute truth. What this now means, that is stated differently by different commentators. Some state that now, after having exhausted our interest in the Karmakanda section of the Vedas, Prabhupada took it in its broadest sense to mean, now that we have attained the human form of life, then the next sutra indicates what is that absolute truth. Janmadhyasya yataha. The absolute truth is the source of all emanations. Then the third sutra indicates how that is to be understood. Shastra Yogivat, that is to be understood from Shastra. And the very end of Vedanta Sutra emphasizes the same thing. The last sutra. Anavritti Shabdat, that having gone to this, having come out of this material existence and gone to the spiritual existence, one does not return. That is the conclusion of Shastra. Therefore, so the Supreme Lord and how He interacts with the cosmic manifestation, that can be understood to some degree from Shastra. But there is a precondition for understanding that which is stated in Shastra. One should have full faith in Shastra. And one should accept the achintya shakti or inconceivable potency of the Lord. Because we are very small and very limited. So like the frog in the well, if we think that there can't be an ocean because I never saw it, then we're not going to be able to understand Shastra. We have to be prepared to accept Shastra, the statements of Shastra in total. Otherwise we also become like frogs in the well. That means we have to expand our consciousness. There's another saying that you cannot accommodate an elephant on a plate. If you bring a plate, you can't put an elephant on it. You can't even put his one foot on it. So in the same way, we can't accommodate such a big topic as the absolute truth within the limited scope of our mind. So one has to accept that the Supreme Lord has potencies that are to us inconceivable. Arasya Shakti Vidhaiva Shruyate Swabhava. Tatsya Karyam Karanam Javidyate, Tatsamaschavi Vitaschavishyate, Arasya Shakti Vidhaiva Shruyate Swabhavati Yana. This states that the Supreme Lord personally has nothing to do. Mr. Ford is a very energetic or powerful person of this material world. But he requires to do some work, otherwise he'll be just another pauper in the street. But Krishna's expansion of his energy, or demonstration of his energy, is not required for Krishna. He has nothing personally to gain from expanding the material energy. He is always independent and self-satisfied. This is in plan. And there is no one equal to him or above him. He has many various energies which are classified in various categories. Shri, Bhu, Nila, Pushti, Vidya, there are so many energies. Parasya Shakti, Vidhaya Vishwajit, Swabhavati Jnana. And these energies appear to be acting as if independent. But actually they are working under the directions. That is a symptom of his expertise. That his energies work so nicely, they're so well formulated, that they appear to be working without his direction. And actually Krishna doesn't personally direct them. That is another symptom of his greatness. Everything in this material world is going on by the desire of Krishna, or under the supervision of Krishna. But that is not done directly by him. That is done by his agents, the demigods, particularly Durga Devi. Shrishti Sthiti Pralaya Sadhana Shakti Nikha Chayeva Yatsya Bhuvanani Vidhariti Durga Chana Rupam Abhyasya Cheshta Teresa Govindavadi Purusham. This whole material energy is like a shadow of the Supreme Lord's internal. She is known as Durga Devi, and within her jurisdiction, the whole creation, maintenance, and destruction is going on. So Krishna's energies, although very powerful, are also very subtle. Often when we see powerful energies, they're very gross. If you see a great storm or an earthquake, it has a very gross, apparently uncontrolled effect. Or if there's a nuclear bomb, there's a nuclear explosion, there's so much energy is released. But these manifestations of Krishna's energy, such as storms, earthquakes, nuclear explosions, they are very, although to us they appear to be very great, they are only a tiny manifestation of Krishna's unlimited power. Much more powerful than the energy of a great storm is the whole energy by which the planets are moving in space, by which all the atoms are held together. So there are tremendously powerful energies of Krishna, which work very subtly. Scientists are trying to study them. But they have, as Isaac Newton said, in my quest for knowledge, I feel as if I'm walking on a vast beach with unlimited grains of sand, and that I've picked up a few grains of it. Maybe since the time of Isaac Newton, they've picked up a few more grains. But the vast mass of grains, they're not able to. In other words, knowledge, even of this material manifestation, is so vast that one can hardly begin to touch it. Therefore, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, this topmost of all Vedic literatures, this material cosmic manifestation is not described in very great detail. Parts of the Vedic literatures, there are more detailed descriptions of various facets of the material cosmos. In the Vedic literature we will find knowledge of astronomy, gemology, medicine, so many different topics. But in the Srimad Bhagavatam, simply an overview is given of the relationship of the Supreme Lord with the cosmic manifestation, with the living beings, and everything else. The Srimad Bhagavatam is concerned with the subject matter of the Supreme Lord. So instead of going very deeply into trying to understand some aspects of the Lord's material energy, the Bhagavatam instead gives a summary, because the really important subject matter to understand is Krishna. And ultimately it's not so important to understand so many details about his material energy. One may study all these things, but that is not as important as utilizing our human form of life to understand Krishna. For instance, a very basic part of biology is that grass grows due to the interaction of chlorophyll with sunlight, and some water is also given. That's grade 1 biology. That's biology that you're taught in the first grade. But if you go more deeply, you'll find that actually that's not, at a higher level of biology, that's not a very good explanation. More is needed. So you can go deeper and deeper and deeper, but actually it's not required to do so. Because anyway the grass is growing by the arrangement of Krishna. And it's not that important to understand why it grows. It's more important to understand that behind everything is Krishna. Otherwise there are unlimited things we can study. What is the nature of dust? Varieties of dust. How is it that the dust is moving throughout the earth? What are the deleterious effects of dust? It is harmful. Many people, they suffer. What is that? Asthma or some kind of allergy they get due to pollen. Hay fever. There's some kind of disease that people get in spring when the pollen comes. So that may be useful to study to try to find some cure for this. So I don't think they've been very successful in trying this. So there are many things which can be studied, and some things are certainly useful. The Vedic literature gives many varieties of knowledge for living in this material world. But we should know that which is actually required and that which is not. There may be experts in astrology and medicine and all these things. These are useful subjects for humans. But we should understand that the ultimately important subject is to understand the Supreme Lord. So that is the subject of Srimad Bhagavatam. So please study this. Krishna has very kindly given us this Srimad Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam Sakshat Bhakti Yoga Nidhya Lokasya Janita Vidhams Chakra Samhita. People in general do not know that this miserable condition of material existence can be fully mitigated by the linking process of Bhakti. Therefore, Krishna very kindly in the form of Vyasadeva has compiled the Srimad Bhagavatam. Vyasadeva. Yes. The effect of hearing which is Syam Vaishyamana, not Krishna Krishna Shokamohamaya. Anyway, Bhakti Rudbhadyate from Shokamohamaya. The meaning is that simply by hearing this literature, because it is directly in connection with Krishna, one can be freed from all the effects, bad effects of material world, such as lamentation, fear, and so please study Srimad Bhagavatam. Prabhupada once said that studying Shastra is one kind of austerity, because it's very philosophical, and to apply one's intelligence to this requires some concentration. It's easier to watch TV or to read the newspaper. To study Srimad Bhagavatam requires some effort. Therefore we are enjoined Siddhanta Balya Chitte Nakaraha Alash Yaha Hoite Krishna Lave Sudrida Manash. That do not be lazy, one should not be lazy in the matter of understanding Siddhanta, or the philosophical conclusion. For by this endeavor to understand Shastra and Siddhantas, then one's mind becomes firmly fixed in Krishna consciousness. On the other hand, Siddhanta Alashjan Anartha Pracharana. The one who is lazy in trying to understand the conclusions of Shastra, they cannot get free from anarthas. Anartha means that which is unwanted, that which is an obstacle to our Krishna. So a general approach to Krishna consciousness or a sentimental approach, that is better than nothing. But it is necessary that devotees understand the conclusions of Shastra so that they can be fixed in Krishna consciousness and make proper progress on the path back to Godhead. So please study these books. Are you all reading Prabhupada's books? Are you all studying? Please do so. Then you can be strong in Krishna consciousness. That will help very much. That is also necessary for preaching. This movement is a preaching movement. Otherwise, without preaching, it's not a movement, it's stagnant. So preaching means to inject in people understanding of Krishna consciousness. Generally, among people in general, that may be on a very basic level. Just like if we consider the subject matter of today's verse, when presenting this in general to people in general, to make the point that there is a Supreme Lord who is behind everything. People who are vaguely theistic, they will accept this. People who are even vaguely theistic will accept this. Atheistic. Theistic. But if they are to become specifically theistic, or in clear understanding of God, they have to have more than a vague understanding of God being behind everything. So that more than vague understanding is given here in Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the topmost thesis on the science of the Absolute Truth. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. It's usually it's very difficult to study Srila Prabhupada's books because the heart is full of anarthas, it's dirty and it disturbs you, it doesn't let you to study them precisely and deeply and steadily. And so how this heart becomes cleansed, how this heart becomes, how it changes while studying Prabhupada's books.
Therefore, Prabhupada is saying it's an austerity to study, because we prefer something entertaining. But actually, this entertainment, just like if you read some cheap novel, that will entertain, but it will leave a dissatisfaction in the heart. But if we study Srimad Bhagavatam, that will not entertain us in a very shallow level. But that will, if we apply ourselves to study this, that will satisfy us in the depths of our hearts. So it's a kind of austerity. We have to push ourselves to study, because we're on the shallow external level. We have to go deep. And if we do so, then we'll get a taste. Same thing as with chanting the Holiness. We don't have taste, but we have to push ourselves to chant, and we'll get taste.
Another question. Should we reject the relishing of beautiful nature? Should we accept?
We should see everything through the eyes of Shastra. We can see that nature is the representation of Krishna, as described here in this second canto. The rivers are the veins of the gigantic body of the